If the Cardinals decide to make a deal with the Marlins, does it necessarily have to be Pablo Lopez? We look at some of the other options in the Miami rotation that the Cardinals could target instead of Mr. Lopez on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I'm a national radio sports anchor, born and raised in the Lou, and a lifetime Cardinals fan. And I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter at JD Sports Radio. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at LO_Cardinals. I want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to subscribe on iTunes, you can do it there. What about Spotify? Available. Google Podcasts, we're there too. Also, if you haven't joined yet, YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe and comment so you can interact with us. Hit the notification button so you know when new episodes are posted. This is a show serving Cardinal Nation and giving the best fans in baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. So our last episode, we discussed the rumors of the Cardinals engaging in preliminary talks with the Miami Marlins about starting pitcher Pablo Lopez. All right, we listed the pros, we listed the cons of what Lopez could bring to this rotation. Now, his pros, he's young, he's in his prime. That's great. Under control for a couple of years, fantastic. Has shown elite strikeout potential. The cons, has had some arm injuries in his past. Regressed a bit last season. It was also brought to my attention how much worse he is in the second half of the season in his career, which is a bit alarming when we looked at these numbers. First half ERA in his career, 3.47. That's great. You like that. Second half, he's at almost 5, 4.97. So that's not good. And the other question we had, is he really that much better than what you have already? And are you willing to trade a starting outfielder in return for somebody who's not that much better than guys you already have? And judging by the comments, it's a bit inconsistent on whether or not you would be willing to make a deal for Lopez. A lot of you appear to be nervous that the team will get burned again by the Marlins like they did in the Ozuna trade. And my advice on that is that you can't play scared, guys. Okay? You can't play this game scared. Just because you fall down once doesn't mean you shouldn't get right back up and try again. So you lost a trade. It happens. It happens to a lot of teams, a lot more than it does to the Cardinals. And from what I'm gathering, more of you are willing to actually trade Dylan Carlson than either Tyler O'Neill or Lars Nootbaar. But it's kind of split pretty evenly amongst them. I just saw more people like, ship Carlson. We're done with them. But it's understandable because all three of these guys, all three of the starting outfielders for the Cardinals have their good and bad qualities. So I get it. I get it why you're torn. I'm torn too. There's not like one of them that I'm like, I got to get rid of this guy. There's something about all three of these guys that I like. I obviously have a soft spot for Tyler O'Neill. I think he's got elite talent in a number of different categories. Other than batting average, the guy is like a 4-star, or 4-tool athlete playing baseball, Carlson, still young, offers you a lot of upside with the switch hitting capabilities, his ability to play center field at an elite level, very, very young. And then Nootbaar, you're just not sure exactly what you have yet, but the analytics say you should be a pretty darn good player. Personally, I'm not entirely sold on Lopez yet, though. And I hate to like pigeonhole the idea that you have to get Lopez or you can't get anybody else. Okay. I refuse to believe that. I think he's a good pitcher, not a great one. And I think the team needs someone who's going to be great and someone who has, elite type of stuff to add to this rotation. But who's to say you have to take Lopez, right? If you make a deal with these Marlins. And I realize he's the one that's being talked about the most, but does it have to be Lopez? Because in the article on MLB.com, it mentioned that the Marlins have made Jesus Luzardo, Trevor Rogers, and Edward Cabrera available as well. So let's look at these pitchers, shall we, and judge for ourselves whether or not they offer something to the Cardinals that we'd rather have than just Pablo Lopez. Okay, so we're going to put Pablo Lopez on the shelf. We know he's available, and the Cardinals could probably go get him if we needed to. So let's start with the other guys. Let's go ahead and begin with Jesus Luzardo. All right, a little background on Jesus, 25-year-old left-handed pitcher, born in Peru. His parents are Venezuelan, but he grew up in South Florida, came to the States when he was a year old. So it's not like he was an international signing or something like that, okay? He grew up in the States. Got drafted by the Nationals in the third round in 2016, tore his UCL in his elbow that year. So he's already gone under the knife once, Tommy John surgery. Gets traded by Washington to Oakland in 2017 for Sean Doolittle and Ryan Madson, and ends up becoming one of the top left-handed pitching prospects in all of baseball. Works his way through A, AA, and AAA in 2018, which is no small feat. He goes 10-5, 2.88 ERA, strikeouts per nine, which is something we're starting to bring up more because we know the Cardinals are chasing after strikeout pitchers. Okay, they've got the guys that can get the ground balls, put the ball in play to this elite defense that the Cardinals are fielding, but they want guys who will miss bats, right? So we're going to bring that stat up a lot, but his strikeouts per nine, 10.6 back in 2017. 2019, or I'm sorry, 2018. On to 2019 now. Looks good in spring training, but strains his rotator and then gets shut down until June. After a couple starts, he gets hurt again. He's got a lat strain. Comes up to the A's in September, makes 6 appearances in relief, and he does well. 2020, you got your COVID year, 3-2, 4.12 ERA in 12 appearances. 9 of those are starts, but we don't put a lot of stock into that 2020 season. 2021, he begins in the A's rotation actually in 2021, but he struggles, and he struggles mightily. 5.79 ERA over 6 starts, then has to go on the DL in a way that I can completely understand. You're going to love this story. So apparently in 2021, Jesus Luzardo was playing video games and slammed his hand down, either in disgust or excitement. It never really pointed out. I can only assume it's in frustration because I don't slam anything when I'm doing well in my video games. It's only when I suck at them is when I get all frustrated. And I'm guessing it was something like Madden football or it was MLB The Show. Those are the ones that frustrate me the most. I don't really play the shoot 'em games all that much anymore. It's usually just sports games, and I never really got all that mad about those games, but the sports ones, specifically Madden, pretty frustrated with. So he slams down his pitching hand and fractures his pinky right there on the throwing hand. I've never been injured getting mad at a video game like that, but I understand the frustration. I did once throw my controller through a window at my apartment once. What I tried to do is I was sitting on the main couch, love seats over there, and I tried to whip it into the couch because I don't want to break the controller. They're expensive, and it sailed a little high and it went off the top of the love seat right through the glass window. Not my most mature moment, but it happened. But so I understand where Jesus got injured playing video games that way. Now, when he comes back, he's in the bullpen. He struggles again. He continues to have some problems before the A's ship him to the Marlins around the trade deadline for outfielder Starling Marte, which is a very good player, right? His season doesn't get much better, though, after he gets to Miami. He goes 4-5 in 12 starts, has an ERA of 6.44. Ugly. For the year, he's 6-9. Nice. But his ERA, 6.61. Not so nice. You don't like that. But then last year, he started to look more like the prospect that people thought he was going to be. Now, he wasn't perfect by any means. Don't get me wrong. He starts off 2-1, 3.10 ERA, but then in May, he goes 0-2, struggles over 6 again with the ERA, goes on the IL, forearm strain. Uh-oh. We know forearm strains usually lead to some sort of Tommy John surgery again. Didn't happen this time around. He comes back in August. He goes 1-3, but the ERA, 2.97. And I tell you guys over and over, don't put a lot of stock in the win-loss record. You got to look at the numbers more than anything because he could pitch 9 innings and give up 1 run, but if his team doesn't score any runs, he loses. So you're not going to say, oh, well, he stunk because he lost that game. No, he pitched really well. Moving on to September, October, he's 1-1, but the ERA again, 3.09, very respectable. Finishes the year 4-7, 3.32 ERA. Strikeouts per 9, though, key stat. Told you we're going to pay attention to this. 10.8. That's elite level stuff, and that's great. But again, injury concerns remain. He seems to have some issues. And I've noticed a lot of these pitchers that we talk about, the young guys, they've all dealt with an injury or two in their past. And I guess that's just kind of what we have to get used to. The Iron Man pitchers of back in the day are no more. There's going to be moments in the season where they get shut down for 15 days. Sometimes these guys are missing a month. It just seems to be happening. The more these guys throw harder and harder and harder coming up through the systems, the injuries continue to mount up. So he's got injury concerns, but seem to kind of right his ship. And again, still 25. Now, up next, we're going to talk about another lefty who was once a top prospect and also a right-hander who has been compared to Luis Castillo, who the Cardinals have seen a lot over the years from his time with the Reds. So we'll talk about these guys next on Locked On Cardinals. BetOnline.net. Have you guys been there yet? You should have been there at least a dozen times by now. They're the number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, college, pro basketball, hockey. They've got it all at betonline.net. We know we've got the divisional round of the NFL playoffs coming up this weekend. The Chiefs are favored at home over Jacksonville. The Eagles favored at home against the Giants. That's one that I'm kind of like, is that going to be the upset game this week? Is it going to be Giants over the Eagles? Jalen Hurts coming back from the shoulder injury. Eagles are a very good team, though. So, but, it's that NFC East thing. The Bills favored at home against the Bengals. That should be an outstanding game in the AFC. And then the 49ers at home against the Cowboys, and they're favored as well. Cowboys look pretty darn good in Tampa Bay. Are they going to go on a run here? Can they knock off Brock Purdy and the 49ers? We'll find out. You can put money on this. There's always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info at betonline.net. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Once again, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every single day. Be sure to check out Locked On MLB Prospects as well. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, including our St. Louis Cardinals, all of the young up-and-comers that we've talked about on this show, Gordon Graceffo, Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker. He has knowledge on all of them. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, so check them out. All right, Trevor Rogers is another 25-year-old left-hander, but he's been rated a top prospect ever since he came out of high school, okay? He's got a pedigree of being top-notch. Taken 13th overall in the 2017 draft. If you're wondering, the Cardinals did not have a pick until the third round that year because of the Houston Astros hacking scandal. Shame, shame. He struggles in A-ball his first year, but in 2019, he goes 6-10, the ERA 2.90. 9.9 strikeouts per 9 at A and AA. 2020 for COVID, he's on the Marlins, but he goes 1-2, ERA 6.11, blah, 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 blah. COVID stuff. But I will point out this, strikeouts per 9 during the COVID year at the major league level, 12.5 per 9 innings. You like to see that. But then in 2021, he's even better, right? NL Rookie Pitcher of the Month in April and May, gets named to the All-Star team. That year, he finishes 7-8, 2.64 ERA, 10.6 strikeouts per 9. He finishes second in the NL Rookie of the Year voting to the Reds, Jonathan India. So coming into 2022, this past season, expectations were pretty darn high for Trevor Rogers, and things did not go well. And right out of the gate, he had issues. 1-3 ERA over 5 in the first month, goes 1-2 ERA over 5 again in May, 1-1 ERA over 7 in June. 1-4 ERA over 5 again in July. Then he goes on the injured list with back spasms. Rehabs in August, comes back to the team at the end of the month, makes 4 more starts on the season, and pitches better before suffering a lat strain. Gets shut down for the year. So not good, right? Rogers made changes about throwing his four-seam fastball in 2022. He used to toss it 47.7% of the time in 2021. Brought it down a bit to 52.7%. The reason being is because opponents were teeing off on him. His batting average on that fastball went from 222 in 2021 to 312 in 2022. And his strikeouts were down a lot, almost in half, 99 to 54 it goes down to. He's still hitting 95 as an average on the fastball, but whether it was, location, placement of where he was putting the fastball, whether there was less movement, maybe he was tipping his pitches. We know that's a thing. He just was far less effective last season. I want to pull something up here for the YouTube guys. Here is Trevor Rogers analytics from last year from Baseball Savant. That is not exactly what you want to see. Okay. As you can tell, blue is bad, considered poor. And then you've got your average, and then the red is considered, great. And there's a lot of blue right there. Very little pink and very little red, which when you hear those numbers from last year with his ERA and his strikeouts going down and all that, it's to be expected that his analytics were going to look kind of ugly. So not a good season. What I can say about Trevor Rogers, though, is clearly the talent is there. He's 6'5", he's left-handed, he's been a top guy everywhere he's gone. Everywhere he's gone. He's already shown it at the major league level that he can be very, very good. Sophomore slump, maybe. I'm not going to define this guy by one bad year. Okay, I'm not going to say that's the guy you're going to see the rest of the way moving forward. I would imagine he would improve because he's been good everywhere he's been. So maybe if I'm the Cardinals, this is an opportunity to snag him from Miami while his stock is down a little bit. Plus, he's also under control for the next 4 years. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's something the Cardinals always look into as well. They don't want to trade for a guy and then, he's allowed to leave. Pablo Lopez, under control for 2 more years, okay? 4 years for Trevor Rogers, so you like that. Speaking of liking stuff, up next, we're going to talk about a right-handed fireballer who's been compared to none other than another former Marlins farmhand. His name was Luis Castillo, who's had a pretty darn good career so far. So we're going to talk about this gentleman next on Locked On Cardinals. Edward Cabrera is the guy I want to talk about next. He's my next target on the list here, and for good reason, because the dude is filthy. His fastball averages 96. That's an average, but he can top out 99. Changeup, this is the goofy part, okay? So fastball average 96, right? What do you guys think is changeup averages? Usually a changeup's, way down there, right? How about 93? That's his changeup. 93 on average. Apparently, he topped out at 96 throwing a changeup this past year, which is, I guess, like a big deal. It's like the highest anybody's ever thrown a changeup. He also has a curve slider and sinker, which comes in at 96. He's 24, will turn 25 in April, and was signed as an international free agent from the Dominican back in 2015. So 2016 through 2018, he's in the minor leagues, and, he's still figuring things out a bit. So not a ton of immediate success, but nothing alarming where he's got like ERAs of 8, 9 or something ridiculous. But also remember at this time, he's age 18, 19, and 20. Okay. He's still developing not only as a pitcher, but as a human. He's growing into his body as he gets older. So 2019, things start clicking for Mr. Cabrera. It stops at AA and at A ball. He goes 9-4 with an ERA of 2.23. Strikeouts per 9 is 10.8. His whip is under 1. All right, that's fantastic. 2020, he doesn't pitch, gets wiped out by COVID. 2021, he plays at all 3 levels of the minor leagues. He goes 3-4 with a 2.93 ERA. Strikeouts per 9, 13.5, which is nuts for a starting pitcher. Gets called up in August, and although he showed the swing and miss stuff, he does struggle. He goes 0-3 ERA, 5.81, but, he's a rookie. He's just figuring things out, so I'm not going to, bash on him because he had a bad rookie showing at the end of the year. 2022 comes in. He's got some visa issues before he gets to camp, so it takes him a little while to get there. Then he gets to ease in during spring training because of that. The extended lockout went down, not permitting him a typical offseason plan. So Cabrera begins the season on the minor league injured list because he's got a biceps issue. All right. He wasn't able to train the proper way, and biceps issue, not good. The second time that he's actually dealt with that particular injury, he also had that in spring of 2021 when he was diagnosed with an inflamed nerve that kept him out until June 6th. So Cabrera also missed time this year from June 13th through August the 5th due to right elbow tendonitis. As far as I can tell in any research I've done, he's never had any surgeries or anything, but he's had a couple of injuries there to the arm. Despite this, he still set career highs last season for starts with 23 and innings at 110 and 2/3 between the majors and the minors in 2022. 110 and 2/3, that's not a lot, right? But again, he's growing into things and he's missing time due to some of these injuries. So, but he hasn't shown yet that he can get through a full season. Now, in the minors last year, he goes 2-2 with a 2.79 ERA and 9 starts, strikeouts per 9 at 12.6. Then with the Marlins, he makes 14 starts, goes 6-4, ERA 3.01, strikeouts per 9 at 9.4. Everything about that is great. He ends up tweaking his ankle in his last start of the season and ends up, not finishing the year because of that. But it was at the very end of the year, so nothing too concerning there. But what changed for him from 2021 to 2022 at the major league level was the changeup. That became his go-to pitch. And it was devastating after, he got clobbered in 2021 with it. According to fishstripes.com, which was a really fun website to go to, looking at Marlins stuff, he is, quote, a remarkable 21% of Cabrera's total pitches in 2022 were changeups out of the zone. He threw 263 of them, resulting in only 3 total hits, all of them driven into the ground with a 73 batting average against, a 40% whiff rate, and a 25.4% K rate on changeups out of the zone. Now, a guy that has a very good changeup at the major league level and has been very successful, and I mentioned it earlier, Luis Castillo, who the Marlins had traded him to the Cincinnati Reds. We know Castillo had a lot of success there. Got traded to the Mariners this past year and has signed for a big contract with them. Good guy to be compared to, right? I mean, you would take a Luis Castillo on this staff. I like this guy a lot. I really do. But so do the Marlins for obvious reasons, which makes it surprising to me that they would actually even make him available if the reports are true that say he is. Now, I did see an article that mentioned that John Heyman reported that the Rockies and Marlins were discussing a deal at one time about a month ago that involved Cabrera and Brendan Rodgers. So I guess there's some truth to his availability. I find it shocking that someone that young with that much potential would be on the trading block, but the Marlins want hitters. I was talking to Peter Pratt at Locked On Marlins, and his feeling is that the team would likely want to hold on to Jesus Luzardo and Cabrera. They'd want to hang on to him. Now, I didn't get a chance. Did I show you Cabrera's? Here's Cabrera's analytics, by the way. Look at all that red. That's sexy. That is sexy. That's what you like to see, okay? And if we go over to Jesus Luzardo's here, his is kind of mid. He's got some good stuff. He's got some bad stuff. And then we showed you the Trevor Rogers one where it was a whole lot of blue. So, you're looking at these guys and they've all got potential in their own way. And they both had different levels of success this last season. So if the Marlins want to hang on to Luzardo and Cabrera, then obviously that makes Lopez and Rogers the guys that they'd actively want to move. And this is, like I said, Peter was telling me about this. He thinks that they'd command similar value in return for Lopez and Rogers, and said maybe even more for Rogers because of the extra team control. He's got more years that you'd be able to hang on to him before he hits any sort of free agency. Position-wise, he said the team needs outfielders, particularly center field and a third baseman. And he calls those 2 positions huge holes on the team. And he says they're going to need a first baseman soon as well. So going by those needs, you've got the 3 main starting outfielders. You've got Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, Lars Nootbaar, which we discussed last episode. If you want to go back and watch that one as we went more in depth on them, you can do that. But when I see you need a third baseman and a first baseman, the first guy I think of when it comes to the Cardinals is Juan Yepez, who, has played both corner positions on the infield. He can also play both corner outfields spots, but definitely not a center fielder by any means. I went to baseballtradevalues.com, and I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised at the trade values for the Marlins pitchers, but more specifically, Cabrera's trade value on that website. baseballtradevalues.com. If you haven't gone there yet, it's a fun little place that you can go back and forth and make trades and people can vote on it. And usually they bash you. Nobody likes any of the trades that you put up there, at least none of mine. Most people hated them. But anyway, just to give you reference here. So on that website, Sandy Alcantara, his baseball trade value is 144, which is bonkers. And that stings a little bit knowing he was a Cardinal at one time. Then you've got Lopez at 38.8, Rogers at 36.5, Luzardo at 28, and Cabrera at just 14.8. Just 14.8. Like, I'm shocked by that. I don't know why Cabrera's is so low. He's young, he's talented, he's cheap, he's under control until 2028. I don't get it. Maybe it's the unproven at the major league level portion that holds him back. I don't know. I don't know how they figure it out, but that's what they've got him at. So on the Cardinals side, Dylan Carlson valued at 49.9, Newt Barr at 39.8, O'Neill at 31.2. So if you use their values, a trade would be quite easy between the two clubs if the Cardinals were willing to swap one of those starting outfielders, right? Now, as far as getting Cabrera, there are a million combinations you can come up with his trade value at 14. What was it, 14.8? Is that what he was at? Yeah. There's a ton of things that you can do to figure that one out. But and it doesn't involve any of those starting three because obviously their values are way above what Cabrera is. So instead, you could go like a Juan Yepes and an Alec Burleson plus a prospect for a Cabrera. And then you come into the season, you make Jordan Walker your DH/fourth outfielder. That's one way to go about it. Now, neither of those guys are center fielders, so that could be an issue for the Marlins. But just going off trade values, that would equal out. So you have to make a decision on which guys you think are worth it. Now, you've seen everything we said about Pablo Lopez in the last episode, and now you've seen what Trevor Rogers, Jesus Luzardo, and Edward Cabrera bring to the table as well. Which pitcher do you think the Cardinals should go after out of those four? Leave your comments in the comment section below on YouTube and let me know. Obviously, you can hit us up on Twitter with any responses to this as well. But the compatibility between what the Cardinals have depth at, which is outfield and hitters, and what the Marlins have depth at, which is starting rotation pitching and big upside for these guys, it matches up nicely. So we'll see if these two teams can come to an agreement at some point. But I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Because, again, I continue to say that I feel like the Cardinals are kind of content going into spring training with what they have. But if they can pull one of these guys away from the Marlins, it could be because they're all 24, 25, except for Lopez, who's like 27. I mean, he's not old. So it would be, quite an upgrade to a staff that only has, two guys ready to go for next season under contract, Steven Matz, Dakota Hudson. And you're not going into the season with just those two as your top pitchers. You got to go find some other ones. And if you can get younger at the same time, you're shedding the salary of Adam Wainwright. We've talked about maybe they extend guys like Michaelis and Montgomery. I don't know when they'll start talking about that. Maybe spring training. That's been the rumors. But it wouldn't hurt to get one of these young fireballers in there as well. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. We'll see what they can come up with. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Last check, by the way, we were just 3 subscribers away from 4,000 on YouTube, which is crazy considering where we were just a few months ago. You guys are awesome. And I appreciate each and every one of you who have subscribed to the podcast there on YouTube. If you watch regularly and you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor. Hit the subscription button down there. Hit the notification button. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Cardinals and at JD Sports Radio. We're going to get by 4,000 on this episode. It's going to happen. I'm excited about it. You guys are the best fans of baseball for a reason. I'll see you next time on Locked On Cardinals.